Hello, I'm Stephanie Lloyd. I'm the Education and Development Coordinator here at the Hudgens Center for Art and Learning. And thank you all for joining me here today for our virtual summer camp demonstration. You are joining us for just a little taste of the summer camp that we do here at the Hudgens. We call it the Passport Adventures in Art. And the reason we call it that is not only do you get to experiment with lots of different artistic techniques and different styles and mediums of art making, but you also get to learn a little bit about other cultures and figuratively travel around the world. So for this little demonstration, today we are going to be making some Chinese lanterns or Chinese style lanterns. So Chinese lanterns, they go back centuries in China. And they traditionally are made with paper, which is what we're going to be working with today. But sometimes they used to be made out of silk, even animal skin. But today we're going to be working with paper, and you can have your very own Chinese lantern festival with your very own lantern. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the supplies we have here. It's pretty easy. All you're going to need is some tissue paper. And we're going to cut them, or tear them actually, shred them into thin strips. So you've got these little thin strips of paper here. So you want them to be fairly thin, and you can kind of do that as you go. We're also going to need a dish with 1 part glue and maybe 2 parts water. And I'll kind of show you here without spilling. You want it to be kind of liquidy. You don't want it to be too gluey. You do, want to mix that up until it has kind of a watery consistency. All right, and I also have here a sponge brush. These are optional. You can also just dip the strip of paper into the liquid, but sometimes it's nice to work with a brush, and at least, if you don't want to get your hands too messy. So a sponge brush or even a paintbrush would work. But you got to make sure that you rinse out that paintbrush real good at the end so that it doesn't get all crusty and unusable. So some type of sponge brush or paintbrush, and a dish with some liquidy glue mixed with water. So it's got a pretty watery consistency. And you're also going to need a balloon. This balloon here is going to be our base. It's going to be the mold that we build our lantern around, and then once it dries, you're going to pop the balloon and kind of peel it out from the inside, and then you're going to be left with your lantern shell. And I made one already. Ta-da! So I made this closer to Valentine's Day, so I made it pink with some little hearts. All right. But you guys will be making yours in summertime, so you can use whatever colors you want. Red is a traditional color, so I'm going to be working with red today, but you can make them any color you want. And the last thing I forgot to mention is you're also going to need some string for the very end. You can use yarn, you can use thread. I used a little bit of raffia here, which is, basically the same thing. So any type of yarn or string to pop a hole on either side and use to hang up your lantern. And then if you want, you can put a little tea light inside to kind of light it up on the inside. So it'll illuminate the inside of your lantern. So I'll show you how we make this. It's pretty easy and it's fun because it's a little messy. You'll notice I also have some paper towels here. You're going to want some of these on hand, so in case it gets a little messy. So everybody go ahead and blow up your balloon. So you don't want it too big. You don't want your lantern to be gigantic. So pretty small, fairly small size little balloon. And then what you're going to do is cut your first strip, and you don't want it to be too thick and chunky, fairly long strip of paper here. And I'm going to just gently kind of paint some of this glue onto my strip of paper, and you can also see I'm kind of dipping it down in here. It's going to be a little messy here, so you want to make sure you're working with over some paper or newspaper, something like that. Just get right on it. You can go ahead and just start wrapping it all the way around. Now, if you notice, like mine, it's not quite sticking all the way. I didn't get quite enough glue. You can go ahead and take your brush and just kind of paint over the top a little bit. You want to make sure that, you do get that paper strip to really stick to your balloon all the way around. And I don't know if any of you have ever worked with collage before, but collage is all about layering and overlapping. So that's kind of what we want to do here. Go ahead and tear another strip. Now, if you find that these strips are too long, a little too tricky to work with, you can cut them again. You can even tear them in half and make them a little smaller to work with. And go ahead and brush on a little bit more of that glue liquid or dip it in the dish and just layer it across. Now you can crisscross them, you can overlap them in different ways, but you want to make sure you've got enough paper, because if your shell is too thin, you know, it'll rip. It'll rip when you pop the balloon, because the balloon is going to stick to the inside. It might get a little sticky. So you want to make sure that you've got enough layers of paper that it's thick enough that you can peel the balloon away once it's all dry. So go ahead and take your time. Let's layer some more paper onto our balloon, and you can crisscross them sideways, crossways, but you want to make sure you get all the way around with enough of that paper. So I'm going to go ahead and just work for a minute or two, and see back up here so you can see me a little better. And careful, that balloon is going to want to roll around too. So like I said, be aware of your space, be aware of your neighbor's project, be aware of your clothing. You don't want to, you know, get a bunch of glue on your clothes. Now I'm just working with Elmer's glue, which is washable. So if you do get it on your clothes, it's not a big deal. But you do want to make sure that you take that brush and get enough of that glue water liquid to really layer across. I'll do a few more here just so you can see how you want to get it to wrap all the way around. There's a big piece there. Let's go ahead and use that big piece. Just kind of dab it in, brush it on, layer across. Oh yes. And you can use your fingers if you want, but if you don't, you can just go right on over with your brush. And you can see it's already starting to connect all the way around. So you want to make sure you really get the bottom. And when you go up to the top, you don't have to go all the way right up to the tippy top. You can leave kind of an opening, because that's where you're going to pop the balloon. And you'll notice on my finished one, I actually cut off some pieces from the top here to give it more of an opening. So you want to really more focus on making the bottom part nice and strong. I'll go ahead and do a few more here. That's a long strip. So I'll do one more here, closer towards the bottom so you can see. There we go. Ah! And let's overlap it right here. Why not? So again, you want to make sure you have lots of layers. So once you do your first layer and you cover all the way over, go ahead and do a second layer. Better to have it be, too thick than too thin, because if your paper layer is too thin, once it dries, your lantern might rip, it might tear. So you want to really overlap and make sure that you get a nice thick layer of paper all the way around. So let's do one more towards the bottom so you can see what I mean. And sometimes it helps to stick it on first and then paint over it. That works too, whatever method you prefer. And if it gets too gooey, if you find that it's too wet and too drippy, you can kind of paste over it with just some dry paper to have it soak up some of that liquid. So I'm going to start working my way towards the bottom here a little bit. And this is just my first layer that I'm going to show you. You're going to want to do 2 layers so that your paper isn't too thin, because this tissue paper is already too thin. So you want to make sure you layer it up real nice. And I'm almost done with the bottom here. And let's do one more strip here and you can see what I mean. this is just the beginning stages, but you can see already how it's starting to come together. It looks like I still got some missing pieces to fill in the gaps all around this area. But what you're gonna wanna do, once you've got 2 good layers, and you can even mix and match colors. I'm just sticking to one color here, but you can use, different layers of multicolored tissue paper if you like, or you can stick to one color like me. And you can decorate it. Once it dries, you're gonna wanna set it up somewhere, preferably this way, right? Because you're gonna leave a little space at the bottom here where the little balloon tie is. That's not gonna have any paper stuck to it. So that's gonna be the easiest place to just, if you can find somewhere to just rest it, I'm just using this paper towel holder as an example. But if you can find some place where, you can let it rest where the sticky part isn't touching anything, because remember, it's glue, so if you stick it, bottom side down, it's gonna stick to whatever you stick it to. So you wanna make sure that it's not touching anything like paper that it's gonna really stick to. You wanna just kind of rest it, top side down on a dish or a bowl or a little holder or a drying rack even. Someplace where it's not gonna stick too much. And that way, once it dries, you can take a pin or some scissors and you're gonna just pop a hole in that balloon. It's gonna deflate. It's not gonna completely unstick itself. You are gonna have to kind of get in there and peel it away very carefully. And that's why, you gotta be careful that your paper isn't too thin, because you don't wanna tear it. But once you're done, it'll be dry. You can cut 2 holes in the side and put some string through it, and take some markers and decorate it, put your name on it, and then put a little tea light in it, and you've got your own lantern. So thank you so much for joining me on this little virtual summer camp demonstration as part of our Hudgens Center Passport Adventures in Art Camp. I wish you the best and have a happy summer. Happy crafting.